Is the circus inside the greatest political show on earth racist? No, but it can easily be argued that the people behind creating the show are. The representation of people of color in the circus is absent unless purposely planted in episodes. Specifically, the nominees and hosts use their privilege and bias to completely ignore race in the campaign until it is useful. Journalists Mark Halperin and John Heilman, along with strategist Mark McKinnon, star in the show and executive produce, which allows them some kind of control over what is aired. In the case of the circus, they chose to show a lot of white people. In the very first episode, we are introduced to Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump. The episode follows Sanders and Cruz through Iowa, a predominantly white state. Throughout the episode, there are no people of color present until we reach Florida. In Florida, Donald Trump is hosting a rally, and the first time black people are seen in the episode, they are seen selling Trump memorabilia. This episode sets the tone for the rest of the season. Following this episode, we are introduced to even more white candidates and see even more white people showing their support for these candidates.
The introduction of the show mentions 15 candidates running for the presidential campaign. The show follows around 8. Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. Ben Carson was one of the only people of color to run for president in the 2016 election. Unlike Chris Christie, he makes a very brief appearance during one of the election debates, whereas Christie is in a few episodes. Why wasn't the only person of color one of the candidates they chose to follow? Speaking of the candidates, it is important to note that the political experts, campaign managers, and most of the volunteers for all of the candidates were white. Along with the campaign teams, the viewers meet the families of the candidates. Out of all the wives who appeared on the show, Jeb Bush's wife, Columba Bush, a Mexican-American, was not included. From this, it is clear that the show subliminally ignores the representation of people of color.
The conversation of race doesn't even become a conversation until episode 7. Hillary Clinton addresses a black church with the mothers of victims who lost their lives due to police brutality. This is basically the introduction to a race conversation in the show. She becomes the main advocate for black people in the election at this point. One of her specific goals was even to get 70% of the black vote. Further, Hillary gets endorsements from black celebrities like Beyonce, Jay-Z, and LeBron James during the election. However, even though Hillary Clinton is the only candidate being an advocate for black people that we see on the circus, she has been cited stereotyping black people in the past. The Independence article brought up an interview where when the host confused 2 African American men as the other, she stated, "I know, they all look alike." Even as the only candidate that seems to have black support, she still has underlying racist views. Contrarily, Donald Trump was a nominee that discussed race in an entirely different manner. Donald Trump is one of the most prominent candidates that we know that targeted minorities during his campaign, but not in the most respectable way. In episode 8, Trump says, "The African American community has heard my message, that I am going to make the inner city safe again. I'm going to say this to African American parents. What do you have to lose?" He insinuates that all black people live in the inner city. He also continuously refers to Hispanic people as drug dealers and rapists. Host John Heilman says later on, Trump ran a racist campaign to try to delegitimize the African American president. Trump used his whiteness and privilege to attack minorities and gain support from white nationalists, specifically the KKK. Dayton Daily News has an article where the leader of the KKK, David Duke, states voting for these people, voting against Donald Trump at this point, is really treason to your heritage.
Throughout the season, a significant amount of alarming comments and actions are made by Donald Trump. Yet the show and hosts seem to breeze over these issues. It can be argued that the hosts had a bias towards his victory. In the episode where Donald Trump's sexual assault allegations came out, they pretty much glossed over what happened and focused on his response. Once he responded, they moved on. They were more concerned about a comment he made a few episodes later about conceding to the election. When asked, "Will you accept the results of this election?" he responded, "I will look at it at the time." The host then spent a significant amount of time analyzing how crazy that assumption is, instead of looking deeper into the more serious comments he made during the election. The carelessness of what Trump said and does is emphasized by their own carelessness of his actions.
Overall, the Circus is a glorified reality TV show. Given the opportunity to highlight actual issues and criticize the candidates for their views and actions, they focus on superficial topics and eat in fancy restaurants with their other white friends to discuss politics.